Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. And can I just say how delighted I am to have such a continental twist to today's Acsom bulletin. We've got Sean zooming in, dialing in from Australia, Liam in Japan, and Ian, of course, in New Zealand. Guys, we're international and continental once again. Sean, welcome back. How you been, mate?
Good day, mate. Yeah, I'm pretty good, man. Just a bit hectic with work and stuff, but yeah, pretty good. It's getting jealous hearing about all these 4 degrees Celsius days in Scotland while I'm down here sweating at 32.
Is jealous the right word? Is jealous the right word? Or smug? Surely it's smug, right?
I'm not, honestly. I don't enjoy anything above 25. I don't enjoy it.
Oh, you didn't think about that move, mate. Right. It's 12:30 here in Dunfermline. Let's do a wee time check. Ian Conroy, what time is it where you are, pal?
It's 1:31 in the morning here.
Dedication in Auckland. Sean?
8:30 p.m.
12. Oh, my God. I can't even work that out. 8 hours ahead. And Liam?
Just gone 9:30 at night here.
It just shows you the global appeal of Celtic Football Club, of course. I'm going to start with you because I know you love a football talk, Liam, and we've seen a whole array of them on your appearances on Acsom. Figures are out, and Celtic are in the top 20 of global jersey sales. It's no surprise, really, is it?
No, but on the other hand, it also shows what our potential could be if we actually maximised our international marketing. Because there's teams like Leeds who are above us, and you can't tell me that's because they're a bigger club. It's because they have better marketing. And, I've said it many times, English Premier League isn't the best league in the world, but it's the best marketed league in the world. And
I agree with that.
Definitely learn a fair bit for that.
Yeah, I always compare it to the old wrestling. Ian, you'll remember Giant Haystacks and all these guys. That was wrestling to me, but that's Scottish football compared to the WWF box office glitz of the EPL. Ian, you're a football jersey aficionado yourself. Do you agree with Liam on that one? We could do better.
Yeah, I think we've spoken about it before. The reach of Adidas when we had Nike before, it was good to see. And I mentioned up before as well about when I was working in the Middle East or when I've been in the States and things like that. If you go into sports shops, and you see the sort of the usual suspects, the Uniteds, the Arsenals. Less so Man City's I found in the Middle East anyway, but Celtic was always amongst that. I never saw a Leeds shirt, for example, or even a Spurs shirt. So we have got that big appeal. We are a big club, obviously. To be sitting on the racks with those in that esteemed company, and I think Adidas has played its part in that as well. I know it's a tiered system with Adidas. You've got the elite level teams, which I think Newcastle they've parachuted straight into that. Nothing to do with the amount of money they've got, I'm sure. Just the size of the club. Not really. So it's. I think if Celtic could get into that company, I think we'd sell boatloads more.
I think you're right. Or is it a case, Sean, that we've only sold about 10,000 each jersey, but we've released about 100 jerseys a season? Is that why we're in the top of the league?
I think a large percentage come from my mum and dad buying me Christmas and birthday presents. Given that their choice of gifts are Celtic tops and whiskies, my whiskey cupboard's pretty full, as well as overflowing with Celtic tops and paraphernalia. And I don't mind being down in Australia. You can actually, I get ripped a bit for it, but you can wear a Celtic top pretty much everywhere, every day. Whereas growing up in Glasgow and East Kilbride, one time I got punched in the face because I had a little bit of green and white showing underneath my jacket. So it's a little bit different, down here. So yeah, we could definitely be doing better. I think there are experts in how that could be, more so than me. And as for selling the limited edition, again, it's hard to criticize because if people weren't buying it, they wouldn't be making it. I don't want to buy it because I can't afford to be buying 5 tops a year, but yeah, surely if nobody buys it, they won't make it.
No, you're right. And that's exactly what the kind of global reach has given us. Liam, there's 2 big showdowns prior to the Ibrox derby. And I think we're going to focus mainly on those 2. One's a football game and one of them, don't know what kind of game that's going to be. We'll start off with the SFA. Start off with Dermot Desmond getting his flamethrower out to the SFA. Liam, is it just going to be the same old, or do you think we are going to go toe-to-toe with them this time around?
Well, I'm on record as saying I'm not the biggest fan of Dermot Desmond, but one thing I will say for him is he does not take any fools gladly. I think they've poked the bear there by annoying him, and I think he's going to wade in and sort a few people out, and I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Well, I just think that there's been occasions in the past. This isn't a conspiracy. I think that if Dermot Desmond has got someone to do his sums and Celtic arrive at these meetings, Ian, well versed in patterns of assistance, I think we call them, not anomalies, then I think we really do need to take them to task, because there are things afoot in terms of the officialdom in Scottish football. There has been for years. And it is time, I think, because, and it's not about the fact that things are tight, Ian. I mean, we say this all the time on Acsom. See, when you win a game and win it convincingly, call out the poor decisions. Call them out then, call them out when you get beat. But I just think that against Hearts at Tynecastle, it was so prevalent. I mean, it was such a big indicator of how that game went, the poor decisions.
It's funny, I think some of the smaller teams, and I mean no disrespect to the smaller teams within Scottish football, but they are compared to Celtic and Rangers. They've actually sort of said positive things about VAR as well as negative things. There's a St Mirren fan I heard recently, and he was saying that he didn't think St Mirren would be sort of punching above their weight so much had they not got the penalties they've got under VAR. It says in previous sort of years ago or bygone days they wouldn't have got those decisions. And it's kind of levelled out in some ways, but obviously there's been these ridiculous decisions. But only for all the teams apart from Rangers, VAR they still seem impervious to that kind of scrutiny. Yet in Europe, it's more of a level playing field, and they're getting penalties against them. And it's so that is a strange anomaly. So I trust that Mr. Desmond and Celtic, our legal reps have got a sufficient dossier to go in heavy-handed and just sort of lay it out. But my worry is, are they really that fussed? As long as we just say slightly abreast of Rangers, then that's good enough for us.
I was having a good discussion actually with you and Martin, who might pop up in the comment section today if he's not working yesterday, just about that, Ian, just about ambitions. And I'll go back to that conversation that Roy Aiken and I had, and he threw it out to the audience in relation to every season. What are your aspirations for Celtic? And in one room of a couple of hundred Celtic fans, there was different aspirations. And there is this feeling, Sean, that the board might have an underwhelming aspiration when it comes to Celtic in terms of success on the park. I mean, they've proved that they can make money. We're sitting on a bit of a nest egg at the moment. We can do that. They've proved that we can sign good merchandise and commercial deals. I mean, every time we do a kit deal, we're told that it's the biggest deal in Scottish football history, and we keep bettering it time and time again. So we're good at all that side of things. But in terms of aspirations, where are they compared to us? There seems to be a big gap, doesn't there?
Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day, and it feels like if you go back to 1999, 2000, just when we appointed Martin O'Neill, and the money we spent that year was like 50% of our turnover on players that we signed, and not even accounting for wages, just in transfer fees. And fair enough, we've only just finished paying off that loan last year, so you can make an argument against that either way. But it also feels that by standing still and with the way the football market in the world has grown, that we're pretty close to competing with the likes of Hearts and Hibs. And when you look at some of the players at Hearts, who was the stream about Hearts saying, I can't say his name, Neuenhoff or something, the one that played against us.
Yeah.
He was one that was linked with us, and then Hearts pop up and sign him. The same with the Japanese body that they signed. So it does feel like we're very Venn diagram close to the market that Hearts are in, and that's really not where we should be. It's a very risk-averse strategy, and it's not allowing us to compete in Europe, and it's putting us at domestic risk the way things are going at the moment.
Well, this is where, if you look, and it was a discussion that James McKenzie and I had a few weeks ago, when you look at the way that we were doing business around about the time of, let's even say, Ncham, for example, Liam, and we paid decent money for a player like Ncham, but we're not really up in the stakes, are we? I mean, we don't seem to have improved that in any way. The Edouard deal was something of an anomaly. We signed Julien for £7 million. Are they looking at these deals and thinking, well, we didn't quite make the money we thought we would, on these guys. Julien, of course, ended up going for, I think it ended up as a free transfer due to the injury issues and the fact that Ange, I don't think, fancied him when he came in. Have we been frightened off with buys like that, and also your typical like Yeti and Barcast deals?
I think there's an element of that, but also I think we're just far too passive when it comes to going out and getting players. We talked about the shirt revenue. We talked about how many shirts have come out in the last 12 months. That's 6 and counting. And we should be spending a significant amount of that on players, which we're not. And if revenue goes up, that's great. That's great for the account. But at the same time, you want to see a product from that on the park, and we're not getting that right now.
No, that is the thing. I mean, if we were able to bring in 11 players at the cost of 23, 24 million, something like that, and we were sitting pretty at the top of the league, Liam, we wouldn't be sitting having this conversation. But when you buy from those markets, you are getting a player where it's a hit or a miss. I think there's been certain occasions where we've been very good, and there's been occasions where I think we've got lucky. Matt O'Reilly, right, who, regardless of any drop in form and for whatever reasons, has been our best player this season. But he was something of a lucky strike for us, wasn't he, Ian? I mean, we were, obviously, who was it we were going for? Riley McGree, was it? Yeah. Riley McGree, is that the player we went for? And then Matt O'Reilly was presented to us kind of like late on, and we took a chance on him, £1.5 million. A guy who has obviously been at Fulham, according to Peter Grant. And then he went to MK Dons after being out the game for a few months. We picked him up from the third tier of English football. That's not the kind of thing that's going to happen that often, though, Ian. That opportunity arises now and again. It's something of an anomaly, isn't it?
Yeah, but he's one to go in sort of, the one to watch, my favourite saying, the one to watch category. But it's pretty true. And I think when you mentioned Edouard before, what we should be doing is signing up players of that ilk and then complementing it with the likes of a Matt O'Reilly, and that marriage, hopefully, it will bring the sort of the cheaper player up, I suppose. But you've got more of a chance. You see you sign a team full of 15 million players like Edouard, you're going to sell them on for more than that anyway. He came from a PSG youth academy, so there's a pedigree there. Obviously, there was some kind of pedigree with O'Reilly because he came from Fulham. I think he was captain in MK Dons at the time, even at such a young age. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought he was. So there was some degree of pedigree there as well, and there are players to be had that have come from the academies in the Premier League. But it still smacks of the fact that we're scattergunning. We don't seem to have that plan. You look at Jim Radcliffe's cut at Man United, and Liverpool are going through that state of flux with Klopp announcing his departure. But they're getting the football structure right. They're going out and getting best in class professionals. Two of them are just got to Liverpool are Celtic fans. It's part of that structure. So there are people out there, but we need to be getting this right, and we need to be going out. But that means investment and spending money, and that's something we're not particularly keen on doing. I think it's just always the model is as cheap as possible. That's
the frustration, isn't it? I mean, when we have obviously spent money badly, it seems to leave a lasting effect on how we do our business after that, and it shouldn't, because I think that when you're looking at the players that have come in the summer in particular, and those who are going to have a career at Celtic, the hit rate's pretty low. Keen to know your thoughts in the comment section. Keep them coming in, and we'll bring up as many as we possibly can. And remember, there are no favourites in that comment section. No favourites at all. Here we go. Going to bring this one up first. Magnet67, great to hear from you. You're tuning in on YouTube. And I said yesterday that we would be streaming live on Instagram. And apparently we're not yet able to do that. I don't know if it's because it's a new account or if we need an X amount of followers. So go and follow us on Instagram. We'll start streaming on there as well. We are going live on Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and everywhere else, Twitch as well. Magnet67, afternoon Acsom, global diaspora, tuning in from sunny Iraq, Dermot's flamethrower. Yeah, let's hope he's got it fired up for the big showdown, although he's not going to be there. I don't know if he's going to dial in. Who's the snitch? Hail, hail, gentlemen. A hail, hail to you as well. That kit above was Class I Lost Mine. Joseph, I think Joseph's talking about your kit, Liam. Tell us a wee bit about it.
Jamaica 1998 away. Also, you know, in light of recent news, I hope you'll notice that no Jamaicans threw the toys at the pram at the flag colours being used slightly differently. You know.
There you go. No, you're right.
Which Celtic captain's dad was Jamaican?
Roy Aitken.
Yeah.
That's the one. I knew Ian was about to answer that. That was slightly before John Barnes took over as the national coach, I'm sure, Liam.
Yeah, that was their Jamaica's first and I think possibly only World Cup so far. John Barnes took over, I think, 2002, 2003, a couple of years after he left Celtic.
Yeah, and he failed there as well. Kevin Mullen, afternoon Acsom. The spine of the team will see us through to the title. If they can stay fit, this is a big worry. Carter Vickers, Callum McGregor, Kyogo. We're going to be running through some of them. But let's finish off with the SFA chat at the moment, because there is a comment coming up here. JJI, Don Robertson for Livi. Yes, he's going to be refereeing the game against Livingston this weekend, but who is on VAR? Let me just check for you. So Graham Stewart and Andy Milne will run the lines. Ewan Anderson will be the fourth official, and Alan Muir with Graham Leslie are on the VAR duties. I don't know, guys, if you tuned into our discussion on Friday talking about the future of VAR, the future of football, and the fact that VAR could become almost like a floating entity with no referees whatsoever, all done in a back room with cameras flying up and down the park. Sean, do you think that is something that might happen in the future?
Definitely, yeah. Especially with the first thing to go, well, whether they can or change the offside rule, the first thing that will basically get hawk-eyed will be the offside decisions. I went to the tennis tournament recently, and when the ball was like out of bounds, it was like called immediately, and it kept changing accents and genders, the voice that was shouting it, and I couldn't see who was shouting it. I was trying to figure out what booth. Turns out, like 3 years ago, tennis went fully automated on their line calls, and it calls like instantly like that. So it's something that football will go to as well, I think, pretty soon. What will be a bit longer, and is maybe about 10 years down the line, will be the more subjective things, like what's a red card, what's even a foul, you know. But I think that actually AI will do a much better job of that. I think after just a couple of years of, you know, like anyway, the large language models work is just human feedback, right? So the more people that are giving it input saying, yeah, that's not, and it could even balance, you know, the dissenting opinions. And I think we're pretty close to being at a point where that will take over at the top end, and we've invested all this money in VAR for nothing, although I guess it will be investment in Hawkeye cameras when we get to that point.
The thing is, when we get to that point, of course, Scottish football will be at the end of the queue. We'll be standing there, we'll be the last to the party, we'll buy the cheapest version of it, and we'll probably take about 3 seasons to get it right, if we ever do.
Aye, it's like Scottish football is that wee boy that wants a PlayStation for his Christmas, but he gets his dad's hand-me-down Mega Drive instead, you know.
Retro.
Aye.
I remember it. Here's one specifically for you, Liam, before we move on from the SFA and focus a wee bit more on the Livingston game. Gerardo Veritas says, my partner speaks Japanese and tells me Furuhashi roughly translates to Old Bridge. Now, if you tuned in for the Acsom Charity Weekender at the end of last year, you would have seen something quite unusual. Might have even been a first, whereby Liam Yatao, is that how you pronounce his name, Liam?
Yatao-san, yeah.
You presented an hour of Acsom entirely in Japanese for our Japanese fan base. I mean, Celtic's fan base, that is. Unbelievable. You know, I was sitting there still listening to it, even though I couldn't understand a word. I kind of followed it a wee bit, which was bizarre because you threw in a few choice expressions, etc., that kept me going, Liam. But is Gerardo's partner correct?
Yes, he is. It's furu, as in furui, which means old or weathered, and hashi, also pronounced bashi sometimes, which means bridge. So yes, he's correct.
Like it. I'm not going to ask you for an interpretation of my name. Pete McGee, where's the VAR audio? This is the thing, Ian. These big issues happen in games, and very quickly, you know, they're no longer even discussed. I remember the game where we beat Rangers 2-1, and Balogun was sent off, and there was footage emerged of him spitting in the direction of a Celtic supporter. One of the guys who were right there DM'd me to give me a breakdown of exactly what had happened. Obviously, all the excuses started coming out with him chewing something off an energy drink or an energy bar and spitting it in the direction. Still spat it. I contacted the club. They told me they'd be back to me on the Monday. That was a few Mondays ago. Still not happened. And it just shows you, though, Ian, that these things very quickly, if they're not kept and you don't highlight them and shine a light on them, the discussion stops pretty quickly, doesn't it?
You know, we love sensation, don't we, in Scottish football? And there's a lot of sensation that's been generated in the Celtic Rangers, the Glasgow derbies over the years. It looked like a spitting incident to me. I think it was Roger Hanna said it on Clyde Super Scoreboard that he was actually blowing a kiss to a fan that was taunting him. You can see the projectile come out of his mouth. So, and obviously, if there's eyewitnesses there that sort of messaged and said that, you know, that was live on television. So even without being reported, you know, that would generally be picked up even by the authorities. You know, spitting, if you spat someone on the street, you'd be arrested. So, yeah. What can you say, really? It's one rule for one and another rule for another.
But I just think we should be straight. It goes back to the Dermot Desmond argument. There's a lot of comments coming in. Keep them coming. Will he actually be at the forefront of trying to take on the SFA over the issues that Brendan Rodgers spoke out about? Or will we revert to type in terms of a football club that is a toothless tiger? Sean, I think what Ian says is right. But it takes the club, surely, to be strong in matters like this and don't let them go until you've got a resolution. I never heard a single thing, even though I was promised directly to be updated. It didn't happen.
Yeah, the thing with Rodgers, the Rodgers case today, it's in black and white. Like, he's even used the words that are in the rule, and he's contravened that rule. And again, it's in black and white. He's going to get a 2-game ban. I don't see any way around that for me. But if Celtic make a bigger deal out of this, then that's fine. I'm not sure how that happens within the same forum. You know, all good if they do that. Mahesh said in the comments earlier that there's a very fine margin of error between penalties for Celtic and for any Ibrox team this year. It certainly feels that way, pretty level pegging, but that's not really the issue. The issue is, and if you look at the numbers, if you look at any time where the Ibrox team have dropped points and they've had a penalty or a red card against them, that referee gets disappeared from their games for at least a dozen games after that. So there's like a very clear that SFA will punish referees for giving decisions, red cards, penalties that cause lost points in Govan. So that it's pretty, to me, it's pretty simple as that.
You know what, Sean? That was the point we were leading on to with Don Robertson, of course, is he was the guy in charge at Tynecastle. And he referees a game on the weekend against Livingston, and no one misses a beat. And the thing with that is I don't want our club to become that laughingstock, Liam, where we're putting out Friday night and Sunday night statements because there's a crest over your crest in the dressing room or something like that. But what you do want is us, when necessary, to actually have a bit of bite and be able to step up and stand up not only for the club, but for all the fans that are investing their time, efforts and money into that football club 24/7.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing is that the throwing the toys at the pram temper tantrum approach does actually seem to get results. So, you know, case in point, what's happening today? It's been announced that Don Robertson's going to be the referee at the Livi game at the weekend. Had that been Willie Collum refereeing a Rangers game, you can imagine that the statement would have already been written out in crayon and posted online within 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. And it would have got some sort of reaction out of the SFA. They would probably have caved like they always do. So I don't want us to become like Statement FC, constant temper tantrums, but we also need to be more aggressive, because clearly throwing the toys at the pram now and again does actually get you what you want sometimes. Yeah, well, I think we need to find some kind of middle ground rather than just being silent on the issue. We've been told time and time again that something's going to get done, or there are concerns with the officials, etc. But then you hear nothing after that. And of course, we are served up with yet another game that's going to be
refereed by Don Robertson. So we look forward to talking about that after the match. John Sweeney, YouTube, you're tuning in. Thank you for your support. I think those two at the start of the comments need to get their own show. You are, of course, referring to Jungle Lion and Paddy Lavery. How good would that be, the Paddy and Jungle show? Actually, if you ever follow Jungle Lion on the socials, you'll see that he's got a very good venue for such a show out in his back garden. And I have promised at some point to come over with Acsom and do a live show in there, Jungle Line. The promise has been made, and one of these days we'll do it. Second Prize FC, how did you get Matt O'Reilly on the show? I think he's referring to Sean. Sean, that's one that you will take with gusto, I am sure. We've all been called a lot worse, mate.
Yeah, I've had the Colin Farrell one as well because of my eyebrows, but that's, always a compliment to be compared to someone like Matt O'Reilly.
Yeah, I get KD Lang, Jeanette Finlay, and Leanne Dempster. But hey, I can't deny it. And Gash, of course, from the Rabseen is. But Robert Arbuckle, an international flavour to the show today. That's what Celtic's all about, isn't it? And a full hoose, but no, the big hoose, Robert Ingram, thankfully. JJI, Don Robertson, yes, we have confirmed he will still be in charge of the game this weekend. And Alex Duffy, Desmond is not going to go toe-to-toe, never has, never will. Well, the chat is that something's ruffled his feathers, Liam. And we know that that's happened in the past, and he has taken action in the past where he's been annoyed, angered, whatever it is that triggers Desmond, gets him off the golf course and takes action. The chat is he is taking a real interest in what's going to be happening at the hearing. It's the 28th, isn't it, of March, prior to the Livi game. That will be Thursday. And it would be interesting if that was the case, Liam. I think it's about time. And it's not a case of sour grapes have been rotten this season. Let's try and find some kind of margin. It's just about time that we did this.
Yeah. I actually wanted to ask, Sean, you seem to know the rules better than I do in this regard, but is there any way that it could be reduced to a one-game ban or possibly a suspended ban? Is there any way that could happen?
As per the rules, the minimum punishment is a 2-game ban.
Right, okay. So basically, if they follow the rule book, then Rodgers is probably out for the Livi game and the Rangers game then?
Unless they make it a suspended sentence, which they can do.
Right.
You know what I mean? Suspended punishment. They can do that, but they can... What's the word, Paul? You know what I'm trying to say. When you pass it down the line. But yeah, so they could make it a suspended punishment, but 2-game ban is in the rules. It's written there.
Yeah.
Because I think if I was the SFA, the smart thing to do here is to try and find a diplomatic out, and that would be it, probably.
Well, I think they will try and find a way out of it without taking on the big man with his flamethrower. Love that graphic. Let's have a wee chat, Liam, going into this game against Livingston, where we are at this moment in time, where we are going, how confident you are for the remaining fixtures. Obviously, the squad was depleted over the summer into the new seasons. Of course, Starfelt played a couple of friendlies for Brennan Rodgers. We've since lost Abada as well to add to Jota and Moy. Some of the signings seem to be coming onto a game, I would suggest. Are Bernardo and Kuhn a couple of these guys that you think will turn out to be decent enough buys, Liam?
Yeah, I think so. Kuhn was just starting to come into a good run when the international break came at the wrong time for him. And I think, Yang looked good up until the Tynecastle debacle, which was not his fault. And it's going to be interesting to see which one of those two gets the nod when they're both fully fit and available. Because, I mean, I want to see both of them play against Rangers, be it one coming on from the bench. But I think they're both players that can make an impact. And because obviously Maeda starts down the left. So it's a question of who is on that right wing. Is it Yang or is it Kuhn? And they've both staked a pretty decent claim when they've played recently. So it's going to be really interesting to see which one of them gets the nod at the weekend.
Well, this is the thing, right? Because when you play Livingston, there's always the surface to consider as well. And you think to yourself, well, this is the last kind of run at it before we play Rangers, Ian. So I think there's a few discussion points and dilemmas within that starting 11. And right wing is definitely one of them. So who we got at the moment that could slot in? I don't know where Palma is in terms of his recuperation, but we have seen him playing on the right wing. James Forrest has come in for a few cameos and done pretty well. Rocco Vata has sat on the bench but not had much in the way of minutes. And then, of course, you've got Kuhn, who has the jersey, and Yang, who was playing pretty well, as Liam said, before his suspension. Who do you start with? Because you're going to have one eye on Ibrox, aren't you?
I'd start with Kuhn. I want to just get, obviously, since the international break, it's nice to have a game actually before in preparation. Hopefully, we come through unscathed. We don't have any injuries. So I'd start with Kuhn. If you're just talking about on the wing, just gives him a chance. Another 90 minutes under his belt, hopefully to start. Lining up Kyogo as he's been doing. I think it's the thing we've been missing all season, is those clever diagonal balls, those clever threaded balls for Kyogo to be able to play off that shoulder. And he's standing offside half the time. He's so clever, and Kuhn's been finding him in those recent games. So I think give him a shot and just don't get injured, son.
No, the big thing for me with Kuhn is the way that a lot of people reacted, Sean, after his first few performances. And I mean, some of the comments that were coming through, I think I probably pulled a few of them up on screen. He was completely written off, and he'd only played a few minutes. Let's not forget, he'd scored that goal up at Pataudry. But there were concerns, even if you weren't saying worst signing of the season and what a flop and send him back and all that kind of stuff, which was coming through. There were concerns, Sean, because he didn't look very direct. He looked a bit sluggish. He was checking back quite a lot of the time rather than trying to hit that byline. But of course, we learned that there's been fitness issues, there's been illness, there's been dental concerns when he signed and he missed his first game. And it did look as though for the last couple of games before the break, Livingston and St Johnstone, he was getting right back to that sharpness that we had seen in the show reels. So it's a twofold question, I guess. Firstly, we're too quick to write these guys off at times. And secondly, who do you play against, Livy?
I think there's no simple answer to the are we too quick, because I was one of the people after 3 games of evidence. I was like, oh, we've got another Dirk Richter here. But then since then, he's just came out a different player and he's looking like peak Paddy Roberts at the moment. So I'm quite happy that he starts the game against Livy. It's really annoying that we have to take into consideration the pitch for games like this, but I don't think any of the players we're considering on the wing in the forward areas are ones we're really worried about on this pitch. I think it's more the likes of Hatate and Carter Vickers who are probably going to miss out based on the surface. And it's not, and I know they say, it doesn't cause injuries, but it's not even that. Like I have an old body now, not as these young kids, right? When I play on an artificial AstroTurf, I feel it like in my back and my legs the next day. It's the impact on it. There's less give and it goes through your body more. You feel it more, even if it's not causing an ACL tear, which I guess is the defense of it. Yeah,
well, you're not that old, mate. Let's be honest. There's older than you on this screen, Ian. Me and Ian are the kind of post 45 club. Here we go. John Sweeney, always great to see you popping in. Who should be president of Acsom, Paddy or Jungle? Well, I'll put it to the vote. You let me know in the comment section. And obviously, we are not a dictatorship here. We will take the democratic view on that. The Flying Haggis, Celtic fans don't get anything back. I love this, actually. They get nothing back other than the thrill of watching your team. That, you're right. You're absolutely spot on. And that £1,000 times 60k is where the finances are. We mentioned yesterday, Ewan and I, when we did our Wonder Around Paradise tune-in, it's on the YouTube channel. The big fella was talking about Dunoon and why we're going there in May. And this was one of the points we made, It's something whereby it's an unconditional investment that you make, Liam, in a football club. And I think today's a good point because we all support Celtic in different ways. You're over in Japan. We've got New Zealand represented, Australia represented. You can't get to the games. We even touched on last Friday about getting your old virtual reality head masks on in the future and getting a season ticket that way. By the way, it's not that far in front of us, that's for sure. But he's right, though, in the point that what we give, you get nothing back, and we don't expect anything back other than the fact that the money that's invested in the club is used properly. You don't sit on a £70 million mound of cash because, let's be honest, that's not going to benefit you in any way, shape or form. I mean, we know that the club's run well. We get it, but we're overcautious, aren't we, when it comes to that?
Celtic board just need to be taken into a dark room and just have it shouted at them repeatedly. Speculate to accumulate. Speculate to accumulate. That is the idea they just don't get, is that if you spend a wee bit of money, if we'd have spent, if we'd have signed 2 or 3 players in the January window that were of first team quality, we would be well ahead in this league right now, because Rangers are not that good. We would have been well ahead. If we'd have made proper signings back in August, we would have been out of sight. This has become a competition because we've allowed it to. And the other thing is that, it's frustrating for somebody like me who, I whine and complain about the board a lot, and I rightly get a lot of slagging in the comments for it at times. But, when Celtic came to Japan last summer, I was the first one in line to buy a ticket. I bought all the tatty merchandise that they were having with the Japan tour thing on it. I fall for that, as does any loyal football fan of any club. And that's the thing that the money men know. And that's why we're getting 5 strips a season. That's why we're getting, I read that the fans in America are paying similar or even more than we paid last year in Japan, which was already 5 times the price of a J-League ticket. So really, it's a shame. But as long as people, as Sean said earlier, as long as people keep paying it, as long as people keep buying these shirts, keep going to these overpriced bounce games, it's going to keep happening. They're going to keep doing it because the money men are being sent the message: we will just keep taking your money as long as you keep throwing it at us.
Absolutely. The Paddy Roberts alarm has just gone off. Pete, it was you that set it off, Sean. But I get what you mean with that. When that ball comes in and he's just full of intent, isn't he? And he does have a jink in him. You've seen that when he ran along the line against St Johnstone. Any wee touch and it's a penalty kick, or you're at the very least going to win a corner. Brilliant. He's taking chances. He's being bold. And I don't like, comparing players to those of the past. Paddy was something of a favourite, Sean, but I can see elements in him. And obviously, Brendan Rodgers was a big fan of Paddy Roberts as well.
Yeah, he loves that cutting in from the wing kind of thing. And it's interesting as well because Scott Sinclair had that on the other side. So but Scott Sinclair was more of a counter-attacking player than Paddy Roberts was. There was a bit of imbalance in that sense that, Paddy Roberts wasn't the sort of player that would pop up at the back post, but Scott Sinclair was. But then Scott Sinclair was slightly more of a counter-attacking come-inside player than a come-inside to traffic player, and that was more of a Paddy Roberts thing. And it kind of feels like we've got that same dynamic with Maeda and Kuhn. It's a really weird synchronicity that seems to have emerged also by accident. Although you might be feeling generous and want to give Rodgers credit for deliberately planning that out.
Well, he'll give himself credit for that, Sean, so we'll not bother. I'm pretty sure. There's a good point here, though, because going into the game against Rangers, Magnet asks the question, does Kuhn have the balls for Snake Mountain? And I'm glad you called it by its correct name. Ian, that comes into it. It comes into it, doesn't it? The mentality of a player to be thrown into the game itself. There's been players in the past who have crumbled under that kind of level of pressure, and they've not stepped up, and they've not been counted. Kuhn and Yang, I guess, we're not really sure at the moment, are we?
No, and that should be part of any recruitment, any leader of a recruitment department. It should be their mentality as well. You got it on Football Manager, all the different characteristics. So surely an actual living, breathing, real person that does that for a job should have that as part of his remit to understand this. And it's not the same as playing for a lesser team. Celtic, the pressure to win every week is huge. So yeah, but I think we've got to give him a chance. If we don't play him, we won't know if he's got the cojones, the cojones. So it's I think he'll be all right. I think he's coming onto a game, and yeah, I'd like to see him do some damage. I'm confident for the game. I'm not always confident for these games, but I'm pretty confident for this one. So there's you can clip that now as when we get pumped 5-0.
Are you joining us for the post match that day, Ian? Are you joining us for the post match?
Yeah, I will. Yeah, I'll come in. I'll eat some humble pie. I hope I'm not doing that. But no, I think since he's come onto his game, we obviously found out that he was suffering from his teeth were giving him trouble. He had an operation, so Let's put that down to that, put that in the past, and hopefully he kicks on and carries on. And he just keeps feeding loading those bullets for Kyogo.
Yeah, this is the thing with Kuhn, I guess, Liam. And again, I totally agree with Ian. I think part of the process of recruiting a player, starting off with data, because you can widen your net that way, and you can get recommendations through the data systems to create a shortlist. And then, of course, you've got the scouting aspect to that. You would send guys out to, and girls. I don't think we've got a female scout yet, but obviously they will be as good as anyone to go out and look at players and compile scouting reports. But then there's another element of that as well, isn't there? And that is being able to step up. And the thing with Kuhn, because that comes into your makeup as a character. And I think, Ange spoke about personality in the dressing room, how important that was to him. And he liked to speak to every player before they joined his team. And I think, Brendan Rodgers probably didn't have that luxury due to the, even though people will say to me he was in the building two or three months before some of the guys came in that he doesn't seem to fancy, was part of that process, speaking to them and really getting under the floorboards with them and trying to find out the motivations. But Kuhn has had opportunities at big clubs in the past. He's been at Ajax, he's been at Bayern Munich, and sometimes it's not just the standard of your ability, is it? Sometimes it does come down to the mentality.
Yeah, the other thing is that, if you're a player like Kuhn who's coming into the team and, has got a point to prove, having not done it at previous clubs, then there's no better way to do it than I came against them at Ibrox. This is the sort of game where, it's cliche to say it, but this is the sort of game where heroes are made. You think about 6-2 game, Chris Sutton. That was when he arrived on the scene for Celtic. Scored within 2 minutes, right? And that was off the back of him allegedly being a Chelsea dud, although I don't think he actually played that badly there. That team just weren't very good. Lubo Moravcik scores 2 in the 5-1 game. That 33-year-old Slovakian Diddy, according to Hugh Keevins, look what he did. And that's the thing. You have players who, for whatever reason, are unfancied when they come to Celtic, and a game against the rotten mob can be the making of them. I really think this could be another one of those days. Maybe not for Kuhn, maybe for Yang, maybe for Ida. There's a variety of players who are coming into this game with something to prove. And I think that's a really good sign for Celtic.
It's a good dynamic. I think Dembele's real emergence as a talent as well was against Rangers, where he scored that hat-trick as well. Griffiths, we were all gutted when he couldn't make it. But it didn't last long when you seen the big fella tearing them to shreds. Now, let's go back into the comment section. Welcome back, Ian Conroy, tuning in at about 2:00 in the morning over in New Zealand. The absolutely brilliant effort. Stephen Donnelly, must admit, I was one of those not impressed with Kuhn at the beginning. It's fair enough. We're football fans, and that's what it's all about. Gordon Coney, I think Livi would be an ideal game for Ida, as he will less likely to be bullied and hacked by Martindale's hatchet merchants. Now, this is a thing more often than not, Sean, when we're going into games domestically. We're not talking about danger men and stuff like that as such. We're often looking at the physical aspect of them, the way that they defend, and sometimes it's the pitches as well. And when we go to Livingston, it has caused us problems in the past. Obviously, I think the hoodoo has been lifted. Would you consider a change up top when Kyogo is coming into a bit of form and you want him to be firing on all cylinders for the Rangers game? He's done really well against Rangers this season. Let's not forget, a goal in each game. Is that a change you would make, either for Kyogo?
I wouldn't. I get the logic, right? The big team put on big players, but I think that's trying to play Livingston at their own game, and if you do that, then you're going to lose, right? Not lose, probably, but you're going to struggle against that, right? I think you saw in the home game against Livingston 2 weeks ago that basically having the pace against those static, statuesque left and right backs was the winning formula. Kuhn and Maeda both absolutely ripped those left. Was it left wing backs or left? I can't remember. Left wing backs or left centre backs to shreds collectively. The one that was on Maeda was just standing watching him all day, and I think I'd be leaving Kyogo on as well. Again, we did used to do that kind of thing where you'd stick Chris Killen on and then you stick Yeri Yarasik in the wing and then just go long ball. But that was a more agricultural pitches and a different style of football back then. I think we stick with what worked last time, which is the fast pace, the fast movement, and I think that Livingston they're big and that's by design. They're big by design, and I think we don't try and compete with that. We try and compete with where we can beat them, which is pace, movement, touch.
Yeah, I would agree with you, I've got to say. And also, I think that there's been so much discussion around Kyogo's form this season. When it comes to him starting to get in amongst the goals again, Ian, I would loathe to drop him at this stage. I want that momentum to continue. As I've said before, all season, he's been the topic of discussion. But you'd think back to the goal at Ibrox at the beginning of the campaign, absolutely phenomenal. And again, at Celtic Park, we need him firing for the game at Ibrox, and I think part of that is playing against Livingston.
Yeah, absolutely. Just that was really going. I don't think, and it's like, he's probably the smallest guy on the pitch, but against all those giants, against Livingston, but he still does damage. He's unfazed. And we talk about having the balls to step up and play. He's the man. He really is. His class shines through. So I'd like, as I said before with Kuhn as well, I'd like to see it's an opportunity for us to have one game before the Glasgow derby to build some momentum after the international break. So yeah.
I totally agree with that. And by the way, you're talking about building momentum in the lead up to the derby. We've got a couple of gigs actually with Paddy McCourt coming up. One of them's in Glasgow, one of them is in Grangemouth. And what's happened is two separate and unrelated companies who make documentaries have approached us. So we've got a documentary team coming to Gracie's, and we've got a different documentary team the following night going to Grangemouth, Caesar's Paradise, to capture the night and the vibe and the atmosphere of Celtic fans in the lead up to the big game. I think it's incredible, and it's testament to the community that has been built around Acsom, that these companies want to come along and film us in action with, of course, an excel in Paddy McCourt. We've spoken about Paddy Roberts. McCourt was a different type of winger, of course, Liam. But two documentary teams coming to try and get a taste of the big derby. It's obviously, one of them's from Germany, one of them's from down south. It's obviously a derby that still captures the attention. Is some of the fervour around that being lost with it regards to away ticket allocations, etc.? And of course, the derby is different. It's a different derby since 2012, and Rangers have tried their best to fan the flames of the old firm brand, where the Celtic won't touch it. It is a different derby, but it still gets the attention worldwide, doesn't it?
Yeah. There was actually there'll be pieces on the news in Japan about it as well, probably. The sports news anyway. But the thing is that it's also Scottish football's Achilles heel in a sense, because the Sky contract mandates we need to have 4 of these games a season at least. And that's to the detriment of the league. I think Scottish football would be a much better league if it was, I think, a bit like the English league, a 20-team top league, play each other twice. That would be much better than the current setup we have with the split and all this other nonsense. It's not right that football fans of any team are sitting here now and they don't know who we're playing in 4 weeks' time.
I know.
That's how ridiculous this whole situation is. It should be planned out, because Celtic, again, this global brand that we want to be. Let's just say that, example, my wife, Japanese, never been to a Celtic game, wants to go. And I said, right, let's go see Celtic next month. Great, who are they playing? I don't know.
To be fair, I think outside the top 8 leagues in Europe, that's actually pretty common. Like if you look across Europe, like pretty much everyone that's smaller than Germany and England and Spain have a split. Some of them split into thirds. Some of them split halfway through the season. It's actually relatively common. I do agree, though, it is frustrating, but it is also quite common.
Yeah, I agree with the fact that we need to extend the league. Now, I know that the Championship gets a fair bit of credit in the media, etc., and I think rightly so. We do have clubs that you regard, they're in the Championship because they never won enough games. They're on their because that's where they have met their kind of level. But there are clubs in that division, Liam, that I still regard as Premier League football clubs. Dundee United, for example. I mean, growing up, I think your opinion is probably geared towards what you remember. I always remember Dundee United being a top flight club. I think Dunfermline are up there as well. And there's a few other kind of culty clubs in that division. That's a quality league, and I think we could definitely extend the size. But we've backed ourselves into a corner with a broadcasting deal, which isn't good enough anyway. Pete McGee, free the VAR audio. I agree with you. Yeah, what's happening with that? And we've also got Patrick Docherty back in. PJ, it would have been great if Joe Beltrami would have been at Brendan's hearing to represent him. Listen, we have that famous speech by Joe Beltrami on video where he spoke at the Save Our Celts rally, the meeting at Selkirk Halls. We've got the two meetings in their entirety, and it's Terry Cassidy at the second one, Beltrami at the first one, a speech by Brian Dempsey. It's incredible footage, and we are going to use that as part of our own contribution to the takeover Celtic online media, which I think the Exchange have been carrying the torch for over the last few weeks, brilliantly with their interviews. Go and check them out if you've not watched them yet. But we do have a wee, probably a mini doc, you would call it. It's going to be about 45 minutes, maybe even an hour long, of unseen footage, archive footage, narrated by our very own Jim Orr. So watch this space. It's probably going to be ready in about another week or two. Ross Murphy, Don Robertson at the Spaghetti had. By the way, this is the last season of Tony Macaroni and their naming rights, I believe, is the least of our worries. We need to just hope the team doesn't crumble again. I think in that scenario, yeah, I get it, but it does come into play. Of course it does. I mean, there's been concerns in the past, Sean, with certain players not playing on that surface, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I remember Simunovic, for example. I remember always having a concern of Julien going to Livingston. Do you share those concerns when it comes to CCV and the injury troubles he's had this season?
I do, and even beyond that, I think just the different players will complain that they can't judge the bounce of the ball either, and I think that's valid. When you're such a refined, I use the term loosely, particularly with reference to Livingston players, but when you're a refined professional footballer, you're very tuned to what to expect when the ball's moving and bouncing, and just slight margins can really throw it off. Aren't we due a vote on this to get rid of these? I think we need to go that way. I know the Netherlands have banned it. I think it's banned in the top 4 flights of England now. As usual, back of the bus, we'll just copy what England do. We'll name our second tier the Championship. We'll ban whatever, whenever the Scottish FA decide that there's they have to do some action, eventually we'll get some percentage ruling on away fans. We're always just copying English, but homework, but 5 years later. So I think it will be banned soon, and yeah, it is frustrating. They get more games called off than Dundee notwithstanding, they get more games called off than the rest of the league. So I don't think it is an all-weather pitch, and I don't think it's useful for entertaining football.
No, it needs to change. There is no doubt about it. AJ, SC Tech, you're back in for our academy kids. It's simple. Find a way to get them 100 professional games in a top-tier league or a second-tier Euro League before their 21st birthday. That is the simple formula. And I think that's the formula Partizan Belgrade deploy internally. They do send some of their guys out, but they're looking for their graduates to play 100 games, 100 competitive games by the age of 21. And I've asked the question, I've not had time to do the research myself. How many of our own graduates, never mind before the age of 21, how many of them in the last 20 years have played 100 games for Celtic? Liam, it's not much. I mean, I know we've got a few guys in the squad right now, but even... I double check this. I don't even think Mikey Johnston's played 100 games for Celtic.
No. I was watching Japan under 23s last night against Ukraine. Really good game, by the way. And, all of those under 23 players are playing in the J League right now, the J1, the top flight. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And, how many Scottish under 21 players, for example, are getting a game regularly in a top league at the moment? Probably not that many of them. And I think that's the big issue, is that the younger players, like your commenter just said there, we need you need 100 games in them as soon as possible to get them up to that level. And you look at Japan. That's why they go to every World Cup, and Scotland haven't been to one since 1998. Is the young players are coming through, and there's that constant flow into the first team at club level, into the under-21s, under-23s, and then into the full national team. And we just don't have that production line right now.
We don't. And, some people say if they're good enough, they'll play. I'm not sure that's the case at Celtic. No. I think we've come to a point where if they're good enough, they'll leave. It's not a case of if they're good enough, they'll play. We had a guy in Ben Doak who at 15, anyone who watched him play was saying he was the Scottish Wayne Rooney. And we left it far too late to introduce him into the first team way of things, into the way that a first team player should be getting paid, for example. And before you know it, he's off ski and he's away to Liverpool. And they will develop him. And by the time he is 21, it'll be interesting to see where he is in his development. Mikey Johnston for Celtic has played 92 games for us, and a lot of them will have been substitute appearances. But, this is a player who is now 24 years of age. He's due to turn 25 next month, and he's not even played 100 games. So I think it's a great point that he makes. And we've got Stephen Donnelly back in. Years ago, the club provided players to do the rounds around supporters clubs. Yes, they did, Stephen. And if you speak to anybody, even from that centenary team, they were given on a weekly basis tasks from Billy McNeil. You will attend this particular CSC and you'll be attending with this individual, and this is the way that it's going to work. It wasn't an option. After Celtic won the league at Love Street, Peter Grant and Paul McGugan jumped in their car in Paisley and drove straight to a CSC event, and I think it was in Oban, Stephen, believe it or not. So these things were happening on a regular basis. They don't happen now. They'll probably never happen again, unless it's something like the captain attending one of the big foundation events. But for CSCs and for venues, etc., Acsom obviously will bring in a few of the ex-players, and there are a few upcoming gigs with ticket links underneath this video. Danielle, always a pleasure to see you. With Mikey Johnston doing well in the Championship. Here's one for you. Here's one to ponder before we leave. He's doing well in the Championship. He's doing very well in the Championship. Would you offer money plus Mikey Johnston to get Big Ida from Norwich? I'm going to go round the room, as they say. I'm going to start with you, Ian. I would. Absolutely. He's proven himself in the Championship. Why not use him as a make-weight?
Well, Danielle, I said that very same thing a couple of weeks ago. I think I said it on the group chat, and I totally agree. I hope he keeps pulling up trees down there, and it makes it attractive for us to just do maybe even a straight swap. If they look he's touted for the sort of 6 million mark. If then Mickey Johnson continues his form, it's quite a few scrims he's scored. He's getting some good press. I think it could be the possibility to just offer him as a straight swap. So yeah, I completely agree.
And it would work out brilliantly. I mean, again, we have used the loan market effectively in sending a player out in the past, Sean, who's then come back and done well for us. We've seen it with Ayer, with McGregor and Christie, and even Liam Scales, I think, is probably the latest example. With Mikey Johnston, though, I agree with Danielle and Ian. Use it to your advantage in a different way, if you can. And I would be all for that. Have we seen enough of Ida? Is there a player that you would want to shell out money plus Mikey Johnston for? How much money would Norwich be looking for a guy like Ida? Where's he regarded? Is he in the £5 million category, for example?
I think Ida fits above O in terms of squad ranking, so he would be, based on what we've got, the second best striker at the club. But I'm actually going to say no on the Mikey Johnston question, because I think players that fill our Champions League quota for homegrown players are pretty thin on the ground, and it's the reason why players like Stephen Welsh get longer term contracts at the moment. So until the likes of Daniel Kelly and whoever's following him up are established in the squad, I think you need Mikey Johnston to go into the Europe with a 25-man squad, or as close as you can get. We've lost David Turnbull to that end as well.
Yeah, we did. But I think you're right. That's why we do need 2 or 3 graduates coming through every season, being in and amongst that first-team squad. We're nowhere near getting a group of them making 100 appearances by the age of 21. But it is important to continue that conveyor belt of guys coming through for the quota in Europe. Liam, is it a move that you think we could use? Because Mikey Johnston's gone down there. He's obviously fitted for any number of reasons, the style of play, less of a pressure on him. The hoops weigh heavy on many players' shoulders. He seems to be playing with a bit of a freedom. And not only West Brom, but I think other clubs within the division will be looking at him and thinking, yeah, he's worth taking a punt on.
Yeah, I definitely think we could cash in on Mikey Johnson in the summer and probably get a few quid for him. And I think that for his own career, he's better off leaving Celtic, because it's one of them that he's a good player, obviously, but just it's not working for him at Celtic for whatever reason. We've seen it happen with other players before. They go elsewhere and they blossom and become, much better, more confident players. I am not convinced on Ida yet. It's one of them, 2 or 3 million, I would take a punt on him, but Norwich are going to want a lot more than that. And I don't think he's worth that, because I think we would get more for the same money if we looked at one of the lesser European leagues rather than signing a player from the English Championship.
Yeah, I think whatever happens, going back to the point that was made by Sean there, it probably spells the end of O's career at Celtic. He's really not, kicked on since Brendan Rodgers has come in. He's not played that many games, but he has, he got the starting berth. Kyogo got dropped a few games, really didn't affect positively the outcome of the games. The Flying Haggis are back in. A tennis player going Tonto as comedy gold. Yeah, we're kind of leaving all that behind, aren't we, if we change everything through the technology. Paul, Andrew, Martin, Liam and Lawrence are the kings of Schneiders directed the Govan way. Liam, take that as a badge of honour. And Ian Roy, if we invested in quality players in both transfer windows under Brendan, we would not be in a position and we would be romping to this year's title. And I think Liam said exactly that at the top of the show. Listen, 1,100 strong on a Tuesday afternoon, Acsom Bulletin. We're here every single day. We cover all the games in the same way and in the same style. We also, of course, are out on the road doing live events, raising some cash for charity. We, Jamie Tierney, the link is underneath this video. And we're doing the fully produced stuff as well. Every week, A Wander Round Paradise will drop onto the channel on a Monday night, and we're working on other standalone videos like the Scott Brown interview and Johan Mjalby, Pierre Van Hooijdonk, and there's more to come. Subscribe to us on the YouTube channel, follow us on the socials, and join us again tomorrow at 12:30, where I will be joined by Big Yogi Hughes. Thanks, everybody, for your support. Thank you to Liam, Sean, and Ian for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Hello.